All right, there you have it. We are having visuals, live visuals or live feeds from the nation's capital at the Eagle Square, where the parade is set to commence for the Independence Day celebration. Guests are already arriving. The president is being awaited alongside some other dignitaries that are meant to be at the Eagle Square. So, but before then, would also take a look at other issues we have in the studio. A two-man panelist, a political economist from the University of Abuja. He is Dr. Bibi Farouk. He is also joined by a very senior lawyer, barrister. Well, let me not say. Let me just say Uncle Sam. We know him as Uncle Sam.
Thank you very much.
Yes, he's a friend of the house, and he is joining us to also give perspectives on this. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Before we begin any discussion, let's take a look at excerpts from the president's speech.
Significant progress is in the eradication of deeply entrenched corruption that permeates all facets of our national development. We strengthened the institutions for tackling corruption and also cultivated international support, which aided the repatriation of huge sums of money illegally kept outside the country. The increasing number of prosecutions and convictions with associated refunds of large sums of money is still ongoing. Furthermore, we will continue to block opportunities that encourage corrupt practices. In order to address insecurity, we worked methodically in reducing insurgency in the northeast, militancy in the Niger Delta, ethnic and religious tensions in some sections of Nigeria, along with other problems threatening.
All right, there you have it. The president there earlier today. We have in the studio, like I told you, political analyst from the University of Abuja, Dr. Bibi Farouk, and also a senior lawyer, barrister Sam Kabo, aka Uncle Sam. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning. Well, you've heard from the president earlier today. What's your take on the general speech? Let me start with Dr. Bibi.
Oh, thank you very much. I wasn't expecting to start, but it's a regular convention, a speech at the time of political independence, a speech telling us about the achievement of whoever is around in power, and probably very little about the challenges sometimes. And this president, at least for me, the first thing that struck me is his commitment to the fact that he's selling his end of tenure message, like he did in the United Nations, and I think anything that is coming last now for him will be an issue to celebrate. It's a speech you can look at from both sides. Some of the things are acceptable. A lot of them are actually not as realistic as they are presented to be by his speech writers. And you can pick a lot of issues with a lot of what has been said. But generally, if you want to measure his performance or the performance of this government, it's grinding and slow. That they had accepted from day one as Baba go slow. It is painful, grinding, painful. Where there is success, the success is grinding and slow and painful. Where there is failure, it has remained grinding, slowly continuing. And,
I think the president himself noted the fact that they took some time to settle down. I think in the first the few paragraphs of his statement, that was one of the things that he noted, the fact that they took time to settle down. So when he said that, my mind went back to the 6 months lag that we had before cabinet members were set up and all of that. Let me go to Sam Kabo.
Let me take it back to the 14 years of contest for the presidency.
Okay.
Led to the 6 months of inability to create a cabinet.
All right, so let's hear from Dr. Sam before we come back to you on that. This is the president's last October 1st speech.
Yes.
What's your take on the presentation?
Let me confess that I did not watch the speech. I only read excerpts of it from the paper. But like you said, this is his last take, and most times leaders would want to write their own history. They don't trust historians to do the narrative. So if you hear him talk about his challenges and what he would characterize as his own success story, is to me a familiar case, and it's expected. Yes, like he said, he came in very slowly, and he's been very slow. And I think that has to do with the fact that, you see, transiting from a set mind of a military man to a constitutional leader has been more of a difficult one for him, to the extent that he became very overcautious, and most times he interprets democracy to mean that I shouldn't be doing this, let me wait till. So he's less proactive most of the time. You see him doing the catching up on issues and events, and to me, my reading of that is that that is his own interpretation of what democracy is. But I would have wished that, even from the time he came, for those of us who are actually sympathizers of the APC, that the composition of the government from the beginning, if they had colored it with people with governance sense and not so much of his CPC background, perhaps the governance system would have been much more galvanized than we had it at the beginning. But by and large, I think for much of what he says, yes, it's just a matter of who is listening. Those points that he picked out, not many of them that I can't dispute with.
Okay. Yeah. All right, well, let me go back to Dr. Bibi. To what extent do you think that this slow pace has affected, the current administration?
Most especially because there was a lot of hope. The political process that led to the emergence of the administration was full of hope for speed in changing direction and achieving, taking us from, there was decay from the problems of the Jonathan administration. They were beginning to be glaring, the failures that were there, the corruption that was so high there, the problem with the management of the economy that was beginning to come up, and a lot of issues. And I think Nigerians galvanized, hoping that there would be a gallop towards change, and a person who had a pedigree for taking decisive actions was coming in, and that those actions would begin to make meaning and difference. Even if it was just 4 years he had, Nigerians were looking at that. That parenthesis itself would have made a lot of difference to Nigerians. So the speed, actually, the disappointment started with the setting up of the cabinet, and then the processes, like Uncle Sam said, the fact that the conception of the democracy itself began to show some problematic errors, in that democracy does not mean slow. It means take advantage where there is possibility for speed, wait for management where you find speed cannot get you what you want. But it was like a common belief that you just have to wait. And democracy does not mean, even the presidential system as executive, it means does not mean wait for one man. So we had the other sector of government, that's the arm of government, especially the legislature, I believe, believing that because they were all together, because this government has had the opportunity of having a friendly legislature, or let's say even they owned the legislature in the same party. But you find reluctance even in the legislature.
Even in the first tenure, you recall the drama that happened that led to the emergence of the principal officers of the National Assembly.
Yeah, they were all APC issues.
You know, and then eventually we began to see that there was rift kind of.
No, the minority PDP aligned to create a faction of the APC that might not have been what some members of the APC wanted. That was how Saraki came up, but he was in APC when he came up. Ultimately, he left the APC, but he was in APC at that time. But what I'm trying to key on is the fact that the charisma of the president, the enigma that he came on with, made the legislature even a bit more reluctant to take first steps, because everybody was waiting for an executive president with all the goodwill to move. But then at the end of the day, I think it is just recently, in the last 1 year, that the legislature is coming to terms with the fact that they have to take actions themselves. Probably after the APC presidential drama, where governors for the first time took the bulls by the horn and went to the president and said, we do not agree, and found out that he was acceptable to that. You know, there was this enigma there, you know?
All right, well, Barrister Sam, what's your take? The president talked about his fight against corruption, and we've heard him severally, not only in this speech, how sometimes he seemed to express frustration with the pace of the dispensation of justice in the, say for instance, the judiciary, and some of the democratic principles that you must observe, you know, sometimes appear to be cloaks in his wheels, you know, somehow. What's your take on how this administration have been able to deal with corruption? He talks about strengthening the institutions that fight corruption and all that.
I think they came in with the intention of actually fighting corruption, but along the way, reality struck, and the instruments and the mechanism for the fighting of the corruption itself were very weak. You see, when he conceptualized corruption as an indiscipline or something that you think the law can curb, then obviously you are fighting a losing war. Corruption is a culture. It's the biggest economy that you have today in Nigeria. And if you are talking about rehumanizing or winning people away from both the culture of corruption and its economics, it goes beyond the law, and the legal system, or what I call the penal system, or the punitive, and all the agencies that you put in place, because they can only do as much as what they can reach. Even if you had given the EFCC and the ICPC, and now you have the NFIU, the police, the best of intentions, and you support them with 100% political will to fight corruption, you would fail if you did not take the people along. Because corruption has to be fought. Yeah. It has to be fought from the base of the society, from the family right up. Let the public know that corruption is not something to be proud of, and corruption should even be part of what we can tolerate at home. You understand?
All right.
If we situate corruption and react to it within the basket of our religious morals, then obviously we'll be able to fight it. But
okay, all right, so just hold on your thoughts there. We'll come back and continue with that, but let's take updates from the Eagle Square right here in the nation's capital, where our correspondent, our reporter, Ibrahim Yusuf is standing by. Ibrahim, can you hear me? Good morning.
On this very unique occasion, Yeah, good morning, Ayuba. I can hear you.
Great. So can you give us an update on what's happening? What's the mood like at Eagle Square?
He doubles as the commanding officer of the prestigious presidential
Well, right now we're live at the Eagle Square. Right now there's not much
Lieutenant Colonel Salim Yusuf Hassan was born in 1984 in Kano town. He hails from Fege local government area of Kano State.
So right now
he attended Kano Capital School for his primary education and later Nigerian Military School Zaria. He is an ex-boy before gaining admission into the foremost indigenous prestigious institution, the Nigerian Defense Academy, as a member of the 53rd regular course in September 2001. He bagged a Bachelor of Engineering degree in Mechanical Engineering from the Nigerian Defense Academy in 2005 and was commissioned into the Nigerian Army as a second lieutenant on 29 September.
All right. Can you give us a sense of the dignitaries that are there at the moment?
Infantry and motor platoon commanders corps
service chiefs actually arrived as the chief of
the Nigerian Army School of Infantry judge
and the
Young
inspector
Officers
of
Corps
police as well.
Ammo at the Nigerian Army Armor School, Bauchi, and Warrior Leaders Corps at the Warrant Officers Academy judge. He also attended Infantry Company Commanders Corps at the Army War College, Mo, that's in India. Additionally, he had his junior and senior staff courses at the Ghana Armed Forces Commander Staff College and the Defense Services.
All right, we'll try to
Staff
get back
College
to you,
Nigeria.
Ibrahim Yusuf. Our sound it appears to be distorted because of the ambience there, but we'll get back to you for more updates. That's our reporter out there, Ibrahim Yusuf, giving us an update on what's happening at the Eagle Square. Now, Barrister Sam, let me come back to you. You may continue with your perspectives. The issue of fighting corruption. The president, is very magnanimous with his words when he said that, this administration has been able to strengthen the institutions that fight corruption. And so he considers his efforts towards dealing with corruption a success.
Yeah, let me get back to what I was saying. You cannot fight corruption without the input and the buy-in of the generality of us, because even if you have the best of institutions in the world, how do you fight corruption within our own criminal justice system that we have? How many policemen? Mind you, many of the ICPC and EFCC officials, they are all policemen. You understand? How many of them do you have to go to all the nooks and crannies of Nigeria where corruption is festering?
So you would say that we haven't been able to appeal to the moral conscience of Nigerians to buy in to the fight against
foundation.
corruption.
That should be the foundation.
All right, let me give Dr. Bibi this opportunity.
If at home, in the church, in the school, in the office, everybody is unanimous and see corruption as an evil thing, it will reduce, because mind you, it is us that have to report. We, the people, we have to initiate the fight. Okay. ICPC, EFCC do not go to the street and catch corrupt people, except they are brought to them by us.
Dr. Bibi, let's get your own perspectives. I mean, the president talks about getting international support to be able to deal with this, talking about, repatriation of money, talking about securing convictions and all of that. What's your take?
I think we are going on as far as international fight for corruption is concerned. We are going in the same direction, a rigmarole that to me has no meaning. The same people that are supposed to assist us to fight corruption are the biggest beneficiaries of our corruption, to the extent that you could even say corruption is inbuilt into the system they left for us. Because the system they left for us is just about repatriation of whatever resources they can take from us. They didn't say it has to be just through hard work, cocoa and groundnut. it's any resources. If it's through corruption and it is taken to their banks, the game changes, the story changes. They have not, for example, prosecuted or even have laws that stop corrupt monies from residing in their countries. They tried to do some magic about, or some drama about facing 1, 2, 3 issues. But the truth of the matter is, as far as I'm concerned, international corruption encourages Nigerian corruption. And it is only Nigerian internal defense against corruption that can save us from corruption. No matter how much we go asking for cooperation, I don't think we'd get it. I do not think it is in their interest to part with monies that have reached them, that are benefiting them.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Political economist from the University of Abuja, Dr. Bibi Farouk, and lawyer Barrister Sam Kabo have been my guests talking about some of the comments or statements by the president in his speech earlier today. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak Extra.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. We'll take a short breather now, and then when we return, the Daybreak Extra continues with updates on the Independence Day. Please stay with us.